Hey, good morning, everybody. How are you? Happy Saturday. Hope that you're doing well. Hope that you're enjoying your weekend, having some relaxation time or time with your family, whatever the case may be. Hope that your families are safe. And really grateful that we get to spend another bit of time together in developing our skills, developing our community, and developing ourselves as data scientists. So thank you so much for spending a part of your weekend with. As usual, we are continuing growth on all of my channels. So if you are new, please let us know your city, state, province, country. Just a quick way to introduce yourself. That's something that I do to kind of help build the community, keep the chat professional. I call it our global roll call. But really what it also does is it helps us just kind of, take an inclusive view to the chat. Because I really want as many people to participate in the chat as possible. So really grateful for all of you that take the time to introduce yourself. After that, I also like to give a little bit of an opening note. Not sure if I really have one today, but and then from there, I'm happy to take your questions if you need help with anything. But otherwise, I also have an article in mind that I want us to go over. And this article, it's from Waymo. It's from an FSD effort, which I think we all have differing opinions on. But some of us also have similar opinions, right? So I think it'll be interesting to go through this article and see what we, with our critical data scientist eye, can pick out. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. But that's really the plan that I have for today. And then for tomorrow, in case, again, if you are new, on Sundays, we do a little bit of a longer tutorial. So tomorrow we are going to continue the class, or the series rather, on creating a project from beginning to end. I was doing some work on that this morning. So really just excited to keep that going. All right. So again, if you're new, please let us know your city, state, province, country. The first person I see in my chat already is Omar21. Omar, we keep things professional, so go ahead and introduce yourself. And that intro is known as numbers. So if that's too much for you, then maybe data science isn't for you. Okay, I'm sure L1 Help Desk is looking for people, so maybe keep that in mind. All right. Casual Economist, hello Dennis. Hey my friend, how are you? How are things in Minneapolis? Hope that you're doing well. Hope that everything is good with your family out there. Rahul, our good friend Rahul, you're back. How you doing, my friend? Rahul, the last time we heard from you, I think you said you were in the process of moving. I think you were moving to Delhi. So let us know how that's going. Hopefully that's going well. I mean, moving can be such a pain. I hate moving. It's one of the things I really do not like to do. But sometimes you have to do it. So hopefully you're doing well at that, Rahul. Good to see you. Lakshmi, our good friend Lakshmi, happy Saturday, Dennis, and all. Hope everyone is doing good. I think everyone is doing really good. Yeah, it's a beautiful day out where I live. Once I finish with you guys, I'm gonna go for my walk. And I've been walking for about an hour, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to eat, because I tend to not eat in the mornings, so I have my first meal after I finish my workout. So gonna do that, gonna eat later, and see what the rest of the day brings. But good to see you, Lakshmi. I hope you're doing well too. Fatima, our good friend Fatima from Meekness. How are you, Fatima? Hope you're doing well. Hope that your classes are finally over for the week. I know that Fatima shared earlier that she has to go to school on Saturdays, so that's not for me. So hope you're doing well out there, Fatima. Osama, another friend from Morocco, says, hello, sir. I hope everything is going well. Everything is going really well. Thank you. And I hope the same for you, and I hope for the same for everybody in the chat. Sophia, welcome. We ask people to introduce themselves. Let us know your city, state, province, country. And happy to answer your questions after I finish the introductions. Rex, our good friend Rex, from a beautiful and sunny day in New York City. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to you too, Rex. What a great greeting. Rex, it's a good thing you're not a sports ball fan, because the Yankees didn't do so well last night. So Dodgers had a good night last night, but glad to see you, Rex. Hope you're gonna enjoy that sunny day out there. Denelson, how are you, Denelson? Dodgers did good last night. Good morning, everyone. Hey, Denelson, how are you? Good to see you. Good to see you. Casual Economist, let me come back to your question when I finish the intros here. Sarvesh, how are you, Sarvesh? Hello, all. Good morning to you, Dennis. Good morning to you too, Sarvesh. Hope you're doing well. I'm doing really well out here. Actually, no, another reason why I'm doing well, guys. So, as you guys know, I've been working on weight loss, and I have a coach and things like that. And one of the things I'm doing is I'm trying to get away from any food that is mass produced. I'm basically done with processed foods. So I've been buying my own ingredients and making my own stuff. Guys, I even made my own mayonnaise last night. Can you believe that? But I looked up the recipes, I bought the stuff I needed, and I made my own mayo yesterday. So it's a good morning because I'm feeling very accomplished, like I actually did something last night. So that has me feeling good this morning, Sarvesh. But thanks for asking. Leo, my good friend Leo says good morning, everyone. Good morning to you, Leo. How you doing? It sounds like maybe today might be another pool day for you and Rex at the Astoria Public Pool. But hope you're doing well out there. And also, guys, as always, Rex and Leo are my moderators. They really help me out a lot. It's a volunteer job. So if you guys see them, if you guys want to follow them, please give them support because, I really feel, really grateful to have them, so thank you to both of them for, being such great moderators. Leo says, I feel you. I'm also making my own breakfast now, eggs and bacon. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not only does it save money, but it's just, processed foods, guys, we're killing ourselves. We're killing ourselves. So yeah, we gotta be careful with that. Leo says, I don't know. I haven't seen the outside world. It just woke up. It's like 11 in New York, isn't it? What the? Were you out drinking last night? I mean, wow. I'm a morning person, so sometimes I have trouble understanding how people can sleep in. But, I like getting up early, seize the day and all that other stuff, right? I've been up since 3 a.m. today. So, yeah, I can't remember the last time I slept until 11. Sophia says, hi, my name is Sophia. I am 19 and I'm from Morocco as well, Casablanca. Okay, very cool, Sophia. Great. Thank you for the introduction. Appreciate that. Hope you're doing well out there. Casablanca is a beautiful city. So glad you're joining us. And we have a few people from Morocco here. Okay, so going back to questions. By the way, if anybody wants to introduce themselves, again, please let us know your city, state, province, country. Easy way for you to participate and, be part of the community, okay? Oh, good Lord, Dennis, 3 a.m. Yeah. Remember, I'm an old man. I go to bed early, right? So, but yeah, I've been up since 3 a.m. I've been doing a variety of things. I've been doing some video editing, some reading. I've been doing some prep for tomorrow's session, some promos for tomorrow's session. I did some laundry, believe it or not. I mean, it's 4 a.m. I'm doing laundry, What else did I do this morning? Oh, I did some prepping for my walk, because I take snacks with me on my walk. Took my dog out. Variety of things. Tons of things to do in the morning. Fatima says, is it my fault that you keep reminding me of that every session? I think you're referring to the Saturday classes. It's just weird because that's not common in the US. I know that different hours for schools are common in other countries. I get it. But just for me, it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird. Like, what do you mean you go to school on Saturdays? I didn't even go to college on Fridays. Like, my college is only 4 days a week. So 6 days a week? That's not for me. Not for me. Okay, so Sophia asks, what basic projects do you advise me to do to learn more about machine learning and enhance my skills? Okay, Sophia, so you mentioned that you were 19. Is that college age? Or what is that in Morocco? I think that's college. So I would ask you Why do you think you're ready for a machine learning project? There's a time to learn, and then there's a time to do projects, right? So I'm going to guess that you're probably still early in your overall studies of machine learning, right? Or, data science in general. So there's a time to learn, and then there's a time to put those things into practice, right? So let me know a little bit about your background, kind of where you are in your studies, because it's possible that I'm wrong. But to me, it would feel like this would be a time for you to, learn and start taking in some of the courses, right? As you go in those courses, as you start learning different little things, start finding ways for you to apply them. Don't apply them to a big project, just apply them to something. I know you didn't attend yesterday. I'm pretty sure this is your first time. But yesterday alone, we talked about a white paper that in the very first summary, it showed confidence intervals and p-values. Like it was literally in the first two to three paragraphs, right? So when you're early in your studies like this, you don't have to understand the whole paper. Just look for the things that you can understand and interpret them. P-values, confidence intervals, you'll probably learn those in your first year of any structured like statistics or data science program. In most cases. So what do p-values mean to you? And then how do you go out and find them in the real world? How do you go out and read them in papers, right? So start taking those little portions that you learn, right? And start looking for ways to apply them. Okay, Sophia says, yes, college. Okay, but I'm going to assume you're early in your college, right? I mean, is it your first year, second year? I'm going to guess you're probably pretty early, right? So just start learning little pieces, right? You don't have to do a big project. Just learn little pieces, learn them well, and go find what they mean to you in the real world. I would encourage you to keep on coming back to sessions like this because that's what I specialize in. I'm showing you guys real world stuff. Today, we're going to go over a Waymo study. So we're going to approach it very similar to how we would a white paper, again, applying the critical eye that you're going to develop as a data scientist. But that's what I would tell you, Sophia, take the time to consider whether this is the time to learn or the time to do projects. And I'm encouraging you to think about it as a time to learn. All right. So I hope that helps. Casual Economist says, how many streams will this be? Are you close to 100? Thanks, Casual Economist. So for those of you who don't know, Casual Economist is referring to my quest to do 100 days of live streaming all consecutively. I haven't missed a day yet. And yes, Casual Economist, it's going to be very soon, October 29th. So today is stream 90, what would that make it? 97? Yeah, 97 today. So October 29th is when I will reach 100 streams. That's incredible, guys. I started like July 26th or something like that. It's in my records. But July 26th is when I started. So that's crazy. But yeah, it's going to be pretty soon. I'm going to take a little bit of a break, a couple days break. And then, there's not going to be a break in the Sunday series. And then, in the US, we have the holidays coming up. I'm also going to be doing some new content in the new year. I'm going to be going to CES and I'm going to be bringing you guys what I think is going to be some pretty interesting content, right? I'm going to go to CES and I'm going to focus on the AI companies and, see what's out there, see what new products, tools, techniques, whatever is out there. And you guys know I'm going to give it to you straight, right? If a company sucks, I'm going to tell you these guys are idiots, right? I think it'll be fun. But yeah, Casual Economist, thanks for asking. It's just a couple more days here and there'll be 100 streams. Insanity. But thanks for asking. All right, so Leo asks, Dennis, I have a question. I know some countries demanding their data scientists and ML researchers to work for their government. What are your thoughts on that? You can only work for them. Yeah, Leo, that's a great question, huh? I don't know of any specific instances, but I'm sure this happens, right? Undoubtedly this happens. I guess in a lot of cases, right? Um, you guys are going to have to forgive me here because I know that I'm making a little bit of a generalization, right? But in a lot of cases, do the data scientists have other options? Not by I don't mean by like the government forcing them. I mean just by free will. You know, for a lot of these instances, the government might be the only resource or entity that is even doing data science, right? So is that such a bad thing? And secondly, the government might be the only one that has the resources needed for, maybe not for like other approaches of data science, but if you want to be working in AI, you want to be working on anything that's GPU based, right? The working for the government might be your best option. Maybe that best is in quotes. But I don't know, Leo, is that such a bad thing? Like, from a choice perspective, like, okay, yeah, maybe the government makes you work for them, but there might only be one, maybe two other companies that would even be possible to employ you, right? So, I don't know. Not so terrible, right? Yeah, but let me know what you think. Maybe you have a different use case in mind. Or, maybe there's other people in the chat who live in countries and cultures where this is actively happening, right? So, maybe somebody else wants to give their view on it. Please do that. But they might be the only like viable choice, right? Not like only choice, like you're being forced into it, but from a viability perspective, like that might be it, right? So let me know, Leo. Let me know what you think. Maybe you have a completely different use case in mind. But that's what I would say, right? Sophia says, okay, thank you so much. Sophia, keep on coming back. I think we have a pretty good community here. If you want to also subscribe on YouTube, the widescreen might help you see the materials a little bit better, see the chat a little bit better, because the chat also doesn't show up so well on Instagram. But just keep on coming back, and we'll do our best to give you real world info. Basava, we ask people to introduce themselves. Let us know your city, state, province, country, please. Michael, our good friend Michael from, you're from Nigeria, from Lagos, Nigeria. Saturday blessings, Sir Dennis and everyone. Won't be here for long, but I'm looking forward to tomorrow's class. Nice, thank you so much. Appreciate you spending any time with us, so thank you, Michael. Yeah, so for those of you who don't know what Michael's referring to, Sundays we do a longer tutorial. We've been working on bringing a data science project from the ground up. We have our contract, we have some agile planning, we did some ideation, we even did some code. And tomorrow it's going to be all code. Tomorrow's going to be all code, scoping things out, maybe a little bit more ideation. Sometimes the scoping and the ideation brings out other ideas, right? It brings out other ideas to say, oh, well, wait a minute. Okay, yeah, I had thought about this previously, but now that I see this, maybe we can have, right? The ideas kind of start to iterate through, right? So I remember that Fatima last week gave some great suggestions. Leo, I think, also had a couple of suggestions. Manoj had a couple of great suggestions. So, we're just going to keep on pulling on that thread, right? Because this is us working in the data science team room, right? Trying to deliver for the client, for the team that we're working for. So if you want to participate more in that, tomorrow, same time as this stream, it's just a little longer, a little bit of a different format. But good to see you, Michael. Thanks for spending whatever time you can with us. Really appreciate you. Okay, so Basava says, I'm from Bangalore, India. Okay, cool. Thanks for that. So Basava says, any tips for a fresher trying to find a job as a data scientist? Basava, I'm going to give you the very similar advice to what I just gave to our new friend from Morocco, Sophia. There's a time to learn and there's a time to work, right? So I would question if a person in their first year has the capabilities required for a data scientist, right? So I want you to think about that. Does this feel like the right time for you to work? Like, do you feel like you have enough skills, practical skills, right? Because if you're still in a learning program, then, don't rush into it, right? Because, another thing, and this also comes back to the previous question from Sophia. Don't forget, your reputation as a data scientist matters. Okay? So don't put yourself in a position to really work until you really are ready. Okay? You don't want to kind of, well, honestly, mess yourself up by getting a job too early, getting into a position where you can't help a company that had hopes for you or put their trust in you. That matters. That reputation of you as an individual, as a scientist, matters, right? So decide, is this a time to learn, to build my skills, or is this a time to work? All right. So I want you to think about that, Basava. But welcome. You're welcome to hang out. Keep on coming back. We give real world data science here. Okay. All right, let me come back to your question, Lee. I want to get to one more introduction. Sibia, connecting from South Africa. Welcome. I appreciate you introducing yourself. Doing a master's in financial engineering, and your content is helping a lot. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. In understanding the place of AI and data science and finance applicability. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Trying to do my best. I can only share my experience, right? So, giving you guys real world advice. Welcome from South Africa. We get a couple of viewers from South Africa. So thank you, and thanks for kind of, stepping out of the shadows and introducing yourself. You're welcome to participate as much or as little as you want, but just keep on coming back. All right, so Leo says, my concern is more about the weaponization of the technology and how this culture can stop progress to happen. Okay, interesting. Okay. So correct me if I'm wrong here, Leo, but I'm seeing two sides to your view here. So on the one side is the weaponization of technology by governments, right? And the second is how that can stop progress to happen, right? So first of all, the weaponization of technology, or let's just say the weaponization of AI, data science, whatever you want to call it, that's going to happen regardless, right? So if the governments are forcing their citizens to work for them, their data science citizens to work for them, that should be expected. And if you expect a weaponization of it, then that should be expected, because you're in a race, right? At the government's level, I mean, right? So why wouldn't the governments implement some sort of mandatory service like that, right? So to me, the weaponization is going to happen no matter whether people are forced into it or not, right? Okay, yeah. So the second part, Leo, I see your other comment, how the culture of keeping their sciences away from the world would lead nowhere. Well, but see, Leo, here's where I think it gets a little sticky though, right? They're only keeping them away from the world if those people are available to travel and work in other parts of the world, which may not always be the case, right? Another thing I've learned, traveling, is that there's countries out there with very, very restrictive passports, right? Like you can't go anywhere, much less work other places, right? Very, very difficult, right? We get a lot of privilege in that way in the US, right? The US is one of the most widely accepted passports, right? But not every country's like that. So Leo, they're not really keeping them away from the world. They're really just keeping them from their own countries, right? And I know that you were kidding around yesterday when you said that, that I like The Art of War, right? And I do. That's a good book, right? Okay. So one of the quotes that I use to my clients when talking about data science from the art of war is when your opponent is making a mistake, don't correct them, right? You don't stop your opponent from making mistakes, right? So, Leo, if I'm country A and I'm looking at country B, and country B is keeping their data scientists away from their own regional industries because those data scientists really can't go and work in other parts of the world, right? Why would country A want to stop country B? Strategically, great. Don't develop your domestic industries, right? Country A might do it, right? Country A might say, okay, you can work for anybody and go build out our auto industry, our steel industry, or whatever with data science. But if country B is forcing them to work for the government and they can't work anywhere else anyways, the only country losing that is the one doing it, right? So I hear your concern, but I don't see like any what's the motivation from anybody to change that, right? So is that making sense, guys? I love how this conversation is getting a little bit out there. This has been like philosophy week on this channel, right? We've had a lot of philosophical discussions, which is really fun. But yeah, Leo, that's how I see it, right? Like, okay, they can't. The government is keeping data scientists away, but like from an exterior perspective, that's not a bad thing, right? So what do you think, Leo? Maybe I'm just being too crazy, right? Maybe I'm way too out there. But I mean, there's all kinds of different countries and different ways that they choose to run all their resources, right? And like I said, I think that the ability to work in other countries has to play into that. There's a lot of people out there that can't travel, right? Like their passports are too restrictive. So it's a crazy world we live in terms of how we view that. But yeah, so let me know if you have any follow-ups, Leo. It's an interesting discussion. I like it. I like that a lot. Basava says, really, thanks for the guidance. You're welcome. Keep on coming back. We'll try to keep on giving you as much guidance as we can. All right. Any other questions or any other introductions before we move on to the Waymo results or the Waymo safety impact study? Anybody else? If you're joining us, please let us know your city, state, country, province. Always like to meet new people and keep the chat inclusive. All right. Let me bring up my classroom. And let me make this a little bit bigger. Give me just a second here, guys. I think I need to refresh it. There we go. All right. Ganesh, good one, sir. Hey, Ganesh, I think this is your first time. So let us know where you're from. The world is full of knowledge and the mentor one like you is the best. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, so if you want to hang out, we're going to talk about Waymo. You're also welcome to join us on YouTube, where it might be a little bit easier than read an Instagram. So I wanted to bring this article that's up on the screen because it's a new study that Waymo has released. I believe they just released it towards the end. I think it was just yesterday. At least that's when it started popping up on my timelines and whatnot. And I think that this makes for an interesting read because, obviously FSD is critical to a company like Waymo, right? Because That's really all they make, right? They make the technology and the hardware behind it, but they themselves are not a car company like a Tesla is, right? So for Waymo, they got essentially all their eggs in the self-driving basket. And honestly, to me, Waymo is a interesting company because I honestly don't have a lot of faith in them. I have had some back and forth with some of their quote unquote executives, and they always scurry away, right? They run away like little rats because, you know, I can poke holes in their arguments and they never really like, you know, they can't keep up, right? I think that their approaches might have more flaws than they're willing to, you know, either recognize publicly or recognize themselves, right? Because I think that there's some items in this study that are a little concerning. So we'll see what you guys think. You know, I'm happy to get your perspective on it. But, and also just to clarify, because I know I get a lot of international viewers. So Waymo is a self-driving company here in the US. Like I said, they're not a car manufacturer like a Tesla, but they do make the hardware and the software. And their primary product is that they have a robo-taxi, right? So you can use the app to call a taxi, a driverless taxi, to your location and, you know, take you wherever you need to go. So basically like a driverless Uber, right? The app is, you know, similar, right? Just there's no driver. In the past, they have used remote drivers. So the driver is not with you, they're at a remote location, but they have access, you know, to all the sensors, all the cameras, and then in those cases of emergency or whatnot, or of different conditions, the remote driver can take over the car. But of course, as you can imagine, there's also plenty of videos online of the Waymo, you know, going crazy, right? I've used this example before where there was an instance of a Waymo that was driving in a lane. It was driving between the two lines of a lane, but it was driving in the opposite direction towards traffic. It was a one-way street, right? So I made a posting about how that's classic machine learning. It's a classic machine learning error, right? Don't confuse a car that stays between two lanes as a car that knows how to drive, right? I believe the term is generalization, right? You've generalized that learning into something that it's really not, right? It looks like it has knowledge of driving, but it's just, you know, it's not smart enough to really know, you know, what it's doing, right? So that's Waymo. So just for those of you guys that don't know, and this is, I believe this is the first time that they've released any safety numbers. They don't quite say it, but I think that this was a compulsory report that was required of them by one of the government agencies here in the US. They don't say it straight out here, but I have a feeling that's the case. So Leo says Uber driver is doing home office now. That's funny. But yeah, maybe some people in the US don't realize that also, right? Because it is not a hidden secret, but it's not something they're happy to advertise. But Waymo has gone from, they have their car technology, and they used to have a driver present in the car at all times that could take over really quickly. And now they've gone to those remote drivers, and now they're claiming that they're approaching full robo-taxi status. And there are some videos out there that show a robo-taxi of Waymo. So they kind of have progressed, right? But that's been their progression, and that's where they're at now, where they are claiming to be approaching, the fully automated robo-taxi model with no human intervention. And keep in mind that there have still been accidents, even in situations where there was a human present at the wheel and ready to take over. There was an unfortunate incident, I believe in Arizona, and I believe it was an elderly lady that I want to say was a fatality. She was killed by a Waymo, even though there was a driver at the wheel. I think there were some questions about whether the driver was on their phone or they were distracted and they couldn't quite react in time, or whatnot. But I want you to realize that even though there's been that progression, there have still been some accidents along the way. It hasn't been a perfect progression for Waymo. Okay. All right. So this is their safety impact, and yeah, and also I keep on using FSD, and I shouldn't, because that is a Tesla term. That's like a Tesla product. So for Waymo, they call it their rider-only model. So this is Waymo, fully automated, no driver in the car, and I believe it also means that there's no remote control, at least not actively, right? So that's what they call it, and that's what we should refer to if we want to keep this as a valid study. But they use a rider. That's the term for their product, rider only, or RO. Okay. All right. So right from the start, I have a little bit of a problem here, because their whole goal is how the Waymo driver compares to humans. But keep in mind that that does not imply a high level of safety. It just implies a delta of safety, right? So right from the very beginning, that makes me a little suspicious of what we're about to see. Because to me, they're already shaping your view, right? They're already shaping the message that they want to get out there. You could argue that they're also setting you up for the future to say, when they can't achieve full autonomy, to say, well, we just want to be safer than the humans, right? So is that acceptable? Is that acceptable to all of us as a society? Maybe, maybe not, right? In the past, just a couple days ago, we talked about how, well, what does that mean when you lose a family member because, a math formula went wrong? Like, are we okay with that? The car could have done better than the humans, but are we okay with algorithms failure causing deaths? That's kind of like a different question, right? We as humans, we find closure and satisfaction in being able to have somebody to hold accountable, right? Somebody to blame, right? I mean, that's kind of like why the legal system exists and jails exist, and maybe even like the death penalty exists, right? There's some families who get a lot of closure from that. But now if you lose a family member because, some sensor or an algorithm went wrong, is that a lot of closure? Is that a satisfactory result to you? Maybe, maybe not. Right? And if we're being honest about companies like Waymo, like an Uber, right? Who, if you look at their legal records of how they handle people that have been mistreated, some of these companies don't have the greatest records, right? I mean, if you want an eye-opening read, excuse me, go check out how Uber handles the cases that are brought against them for sexual assault against their drivers. Uber is a pretty slippery company. So are you going to count on these companies to stand by you when your grandma dies in an accident? Maybe, maybe not, right? So keep that in mind, because I'm already suspicious when they're saying, well, we just want to do better than the humans. That's not a positive thing. All right, so let's look at some numbers here. I love this chart because this chart really stood out to me. So just in case you can't read it, as part of their safety, Waymo is claiming 25 million rider-only miles traveled. And this is the breakdown that they are giving through July 2024. So fairly recent. 25 million miles, and this is their breakout. Anything jumping out at anybody? Anybody wanna give their observations here? Give you guys another couple seconds here to look at it. Let me know. Let me know in the comments. Anything jumping out? Okay, Rex is asking a great question. How's traffic in these cities? That's a good question, Rex. We're going to come back to that. But there should be something that's glaringly obvious in this data. Oh, yeah, you're asking a good question, Rex. You're on the right track. What do you guys think? Remember, they're claiming that their entire miles driven is 25 million, right? And presumably, they're using that data for training, right? That's a pretty safe assumption. So Leo says the lack of training on different roads. Okay, yeah, but do you want to be more specific on that, Leo? Is anybody concerned about this line for Phoenix? Is anybody concerned about that number? Anybody? $17 over $25? What proportion is that? It's quite a lot, right? So yeah. So Leo and Rex, I mean, that number should be alarming to anybody, right? Because this confirms something that I've suspected for a very long time. It is nearly impossible for a car like this, and I'm talking Tesla, Waymo, whoever is attempting this, it's nearly impossible to not build bias into your models based on on the cities and the roads that you are training on, right? So this confirms that view. 17 over 25 is a massive proportion, right? What is that, like 65%, 70%, something like that? I'm doing it off the top of my head, but like that's alarming, right? Like we should all be concerned by that. How do you take a car that is heavily trained on Phoenix roads and take it to LA or take it to San Francisco? Like that's not good, right? That's a problem. And I've been saying this since like 2018 because I mean just think about how you would create one of these companies, right? It would be impossible for you to account for all these conditions. You're going to be overweighted, which is biased to some of these cities, some of these road conditions, right? And another thing that I think we should all be concerned now. I'm not going to ask you this because I know some of you, are from outside the United States, or you don't know the Phoenix area, right? So the next question is, why Phoenix? Okay. You know how much rain Phoenix gets during the year? Like none. They get like 5 days of rain throughout the year. I'm exaggerating, but it's one of the driest parts of the US. It's a desert community. Okay. Do you know how many old highways there are in Phoenix? Not many, because it's one of the newer cities in the US, right? Large metropolitan area that has really just kind of grown. So, grown in the last 20, 30 years. So they have some of the newest roads in the US, right? So that means they're wider roads. The markers are clearer, right? Because the markers in the lane paints and all that are newer. They tend to be wider highways than what you would find like in New York City, right? There's not a lot of bridges, not a lot of tunnels, right? I just told you that Phoenix is a desert community. Deserts tend to be flat, right? Phoenix is a relatively flat city, right? Phoenix is on the West Coast, and on the West Coast of the the western part of the United States, not the coast. The western part of the United States, we don't have things that other states do. We don't have a lot of bridges. There's no rivers in the desert, so there's no bridges, right? There's no toll booths, right? Toll booths to pay to go on the highway are very common on the East Coast. They're very rare on the west part of the United States, right? I mean, think about that. If you have to navigate a toll booth in a self-driving car, that's like a whole other model that you need for that, right? Because there's a gate. You got to make sure the gate's up before you go forward. You might have to stop, based on the reply that the toll gives you, if your toll is paid or not, right? Waymo has avoided that, right? Because these are all, with the exception of Austin, these are all cities in the western part of the United States. It's literally impossible to avoid bias. So, these numbers support my gut feeling of it, where they're cherry picking the cities that they go to in order to say, hey, guess what? Our car works and we have all these training miles and all these hours of successful rides. But you have it for one city with ideal driving conditions. Or if you guys remember, the last time we talked about Tesla, we talked about the investigation that's now being done, right? There's an open investigation against Tesla. And they cited, the foggy conditions and the low visibility conditions, right? I think is what they cited specifically. And I'm saying the government cited that, right? Phoenix doesn't have a lot of fog. They have dust storms, I'll give them that. But they have major dust storms where, they even tell you to stay inside, like don't go out, right? So, cars wouldn't be going out anyways. But there's no fog in Phoenix. So this is how you end up with those types of government investigations, because there was no training for every possible condition. You were training for Phoenix condition, right? Leo says, that's crazy. The new version of it's running locally, so it's all right. Yeah, Leo. That's definitely a part of it, right? That it worked in Phoenix, so it has to work everywhere else. And that's a terrible assumption. Terrible assumption. The O-rings case of the Space Shuttle Challenger in 1986. Ooh, that's a very interesting comment. Uh, let me know more about it. It was Sabia. Let me know more about that, Sabia. How do you see the parallels here? Because the O-rings is a very complicated case, also, right? But let me know. Let me know what parallels you see there. I'm curious. You're bringing up a good point there. So I'll tell you guys something funny. Like I say, I have no problems going hand to hand with Waymo. I think they're a terrible company, right? And the last time one of their executives wrote to me, I did this on X because I'm happy to air out, on X. I don't do anything in private like that. And I told them this. I said, look, don't tell me about Phoenix. Tell me about how you're doing in New York City. Right? Because there's a reason why you're not in New York City and why you're in Phoenix. You just don't want to say it. I told them that, right? Do you know that this chucklehead sent me an article from 10 years ago talking about their tests in New York City? He sent me a blog article from 10 years ago of Waymo doing their experiments or like a pilot run or whatever in New York City. First of all, two things, right? Three things. One, the executives at Waymo are idiots. Two, you did it 10 years ago and you're not doing it now. What else do you need to know? And then the third thing is, who here knew that Waymo has been at this for 10 years? Like, do you think most people realize that Waymo has been around that long? So what have I told you guys, right? I've always said that the fundamental problem that we have here, the root cause, is that people assume that machine learning can solve every single problem, right? There's nothing machine learning can't solve, right? That's the fundamental assumption that everybody is under. Now, we as data scientists should be smarter than that, right? As you develop your careers, you're always going to come across those problems that you never quite got right, right? So if you've been around for 10 years and you're still trying to solve this, like, the writing's on the wall, right? Maybe machine learning literally can't solve, the writer only or FSD models. Like, at some point you have to be able to take a step back and say, okay, well, wait a minute, 10 years and we're still having accidents. Like, we got to do something here, right? We have to have like a come to the light moment and realize whether it makes sense or not. So really interesting for these numbers. And again, be careful with this, right? Because now you know that you are overweighted to miles in Phoenix. And Phoenix has, it'd be hard to pick a more ideal city than Phoenix in terms of the quality of the driving conditions. It's nothing like a New York City, right? With the traffic and the stoplights and the pedestrian traffic, the one-way streets, the change in terrain, right? The weather. I mean, New York's a nightmare for that, right? There's reasons why Waymo is not in New York. There's reasons why all four of these cities are on the western side of the US. Austin is arguably in the West, Midwest. But there's reasons for it, right? So Sibia says pour or massage extrapolation. Yeah, sure. Okay, I can see that to the O-rings. Yeah. Because see, Sibia, where I thought you were going with that is that my understanding of the O-rings case is that there were scientists who had concerns about the O-rings because I think they had failed in a previous test or because I think they had like one aborted launch like the day before, right? Or maybe it was the weather, right? Because the frost of the morning cause part of the O-ring problem, right? The bureaucracy of NASA has been cited in that accident as not being able to listen to its people, right? Because there was a small group of people within the scientists who said we shouldn't go, right? So I thought that's where you were going with that. And that's really what I'm trying to avoid here, right? I'm trying to step away from the hype and the bleeding edge technology and all that stuff and say, well, wait a minute, let's look at what the data tells us. And the data says you're overweighted on Phoenix and that you've been working on this problem for 10 plus years and we still have accidents, right? But I appreciate the parallel there, Sibia. It's a good thought. It's not, but 10 years ago it performed really well. Well, Leo, you're bringing up a great point there, right? Driving conditions change. Signs change, right? Like signage change, the number of lanes change. There's detours, temporary changes, right, that you have to go through. So, yeah, I mean, just because it works today in Phoenix, it might not work tomorrow in Phoenix, even with all of these miles, right? So, something to think about there, guys. Something to think about. So here they're going on to their human benchmarks, right? So these numbers are interesting. The 81% represents the fewer airbag deployment crashes, which is only 34 fewer. And also it's an interesting metric. Why the airbag deployment crashes? I have some thoughts on that, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Why do you think they would use airbag deployment? The middle number, the 72%, is fewer injury-causing crashes. That may sound like a positive number, but here's the thing, guys. I read their methodology, and we can certainly look at it again. They don't release how they defined injury-causing. They don't release how the severity of those injuries. So was it somebody who, maybe just had a sore back after the accident, or did somebody lose a limb or something more serious, right? Because they don't define the injury causing side of that. And then 57% of fewer police reported crashes. Well, arguably, the police doesn't really do accidents as much anymore. At least not here in the US. I don't know how it is in other countries. But here in the US, an accident, they just let the insurance companies handle it. You exchange information and you call your insurance, they call theirs, and then they work it out. Like, the police isn't always involved. In fact, you could say it's rarely involved. So is that a good metric? Maybe, maybe not, right? But I want to get your feedback on the 81% fewer airbag deployments. Why do you guys think they would focus on that? While you guys think about that, I want to read Sibia's latest message here. The parallel I see is the O-rings were tested in warmer conditions, but the Challenger was launched in extremely cold weather. Ah, okay. Waymo must give us more data from other areas and not only Phoenix. Well, here's the thing, Sibia. That's all the data they have, right? But they are moving into other cities. But that's all the data that they have available because they're so overweighted to the Phoenix area. Now, do they release all of their crash data? Not always, right? We're going to get to see what some of the data they released here was. But in some cases, and I think Tesla is also particularly guilty of this, they do a really good job of hiding those crash reports. I can't remember what the number was for Tesla, but the motor vehicles department in California requires the self-driving companies, the automated driving companies, to report all crashes. And there was discussion about how the number of crashes on record with the DMV is significantly higher than what Tesla will tell you it is, right? And and that's assuming that the motor vehicle records are accurate, because they most likely are. It's a government reporting requirement, so it's unlikely that Tesla is messing with those numbers, right? But they can mess with it on the publicity side, right? And keep that quiet. But Sibia, I understand you better now, and I do like that that parallel to different testing conditions versus launch conditions, right? So yeah, I see it. I see it. Thanks for that. PRNV, thanks for joining us. Let us know where you're from if you'd like. What is Waymo? Yeah, so if those of you who aren't familiar, Waymo is one of the self-driving car companies or self-driving services out here in the US. I stopped from saying car company because they don't make their own cars, right? Tesla makes their cars and their self-driving software. Waymo doesn't make cars, but it is self-driving software. They have an app. It's like an Uber, but there's no driver, right? So, they're aiming for complete autonomy. So PRNV, I hope that helps you. So Rex says, what's the best way to approach stakeholders when they wish to include outliers and make certain assertions when these data points outweigh the data set? Rex, it's honesty. It's honesty. It's honesty and being clear with them on what the consequences could be, right? And in a way, that's kind of the challenge here, right? And why I'm so, down on these companies, because they're just plain not being honest, right? They're not being honest with the public and not being honest with themselves, right? I mean, I'd be embarrassed to be posting these numbers, right? But yeah, Rex, I mean, you'd have to sit down and have a talk and say, look, we're happy to go down this road if that's what you want to do, but I want you to realize that these are the potential results that could happen. And here's why I don't recommend you doing this, right? Now, here's where the problem comes, Rex. In a lot of those cases, those stakeholders would come back to you and say, well, we don't have more data, or it'd be too expensive to get, or whatever, right? For whatever X reason, they can't help you either on the stakeholder. And it's at that point where you would have to say, you as the responsible data scientist would have to say, okay, well then I recommend that we don't continue with this project because, the results are not going to be something that you're going to be happy with. The results aren't going to be something that are going to be really moving you forward in a significant way, right? And that's essentially kind of like, the underlying message here also, right? That at some point you'd have to say, okay, well, look, we just can't do better than where you're at now. We have to cut it off here. Now, unfortunately, a company like Waymo, is driven a lot by financial interests than anything else, right? So are they motivated to put out the best possible data, the best possible product out there? Or are they motivated to, meet their latest quarterly earnings or whatever, right? Or, meet their next funding round, right? You have to look at those motivations also. But, but as far as you asking Rex, for all of us, future careers and things along those lines, it's just about being honest and letting them know what's coming up ahead. And because some of them might not know, right? Some of those stakeholders might tell you, well, who cares if we're overweighted to 1 year's worth of data or whatever, right? Like they just literally don't know any better that it could cause problems. So that's part of you being the data scientist and saying, okay, we can do this, but you're going to want to consider this, this, and this. So in cases like the data science report may tell a different story than what marketing may put out there. Oh, all the time, Rex, all the time. Yeah. For never ever, thank you for joining us. I think it's your first time. We ask people to introduce themselves, so let us know. says yes, ethical data. Yeah, yeah, you're right. That is like one of the root causes here, right? Because really, to me, from that perspective, um, it's really a pet peeve of mine to see stuff like this layout, because this is unethical. Because Waymo's out there saying, "Oh, look, we're so safe. We've got 25 million miles of experience in our training data or whatever," right? That's the part they tell you. They don't tell you that it was 65% or 70% in Phoenix, right? So yeah, I mean that's the part that really gets to me, because it's just plain dishonest, right? It's just plain unethical. So that's where, like, these numbers are terrifying to me, because when they advertise their 25 million miles, it's wrong. It's just plain ethically wrong. So Forever Never says, are they p hacking? Maybe we'll have to look at that. We'll have to look at that in some other charts. But to your point, we have seen p hacking in just yesterday, in the paper we saw yesterday, right? Or Rex, even to your question about what the data science report says and what the marketing and what marketing puts out there, right? Just yesterday we looked at that report where they said it was AI. Wasn't AI, it was machine learning. They said it was a groundbreaking study. It wasn't. They were p hacking, right? They said that it was a great study with all these images, but it was a meta study, right? They were using images from 1974 or whatever it was, right? So yeah, I mean, it happens all the time, right? What you do as a researcher versus the spin that gets out there, right? The messaging that gets out there, it's absolutely different. But it's up to you, right? It's up to you, the scientist, to be able to step in and say, well, wait a minute, hold on a second, that's not 100% accurate. Here's what's actually happening, right? Okay, so Fatima says, I think likely determined through extensive testing and simulations that this percentage provides an optimal balance between the effective protection during crashes, avoiding unnecessary deployment. Okay, thank you for that, Fatima. So Fatima is commenting on the previous question that I asked about the fewer airbag deployment crashes, right? So I hear you on that, right? Here's the thing, Fatima. I think that this is a trap. And the reason I say that is because at least in the US, I'm assuming it's similar in other countries, right? An airbag deployment in a car is very expensive. It costs a lot of money to replace an airbag. So a lot of insurance companies use that as a gauge, because in a lot of cases, if your airbag goes off, that replacement value is usually worth more than the car. So it basically makes that car a total loss. It makes the accident a total loss. So now, even if the airbag worked and you're safe and thank God, there's no big injuries, the car itself is ruined because it just costs too much to replace the airbag. So to me, this is not the 81% that we're looking at. This is not a safety thing. They're using it as something to distract you. It's an insurance thing. It's a cost thing. And I also say that because if we're probably not going to have time today to do it. But if you look at the other parts of the study, they mention the insurance rates and how it relates to insurance concerns. Because make no mistake about it, guys, the insurance companies are keeping a close eye on this also, right? So this 81% is not to help us, the general public. It's to help Waymo sell this to the insurance companies and say, well, if you use us, we're still going to cause accidents. They're just going to cost you, Mr. Insurance Company, less. right? That's all it is. Because Waymo doesn't just have to market to us; they have to market to the insurance company. So the 81%, I'm highly suspicious of why that's a metric. But I think it's a metric for the costs. Because this is Waymo saying, we're not going to reach perfection, but we got to have like a good earnings call next month. So we'll just tell the insurance companies that we'll crash. We're just going to do it at a cheaper rate, like dollar rate. I mean, not percentage rate, like dollar rates. It's just going to cost you less to crash with Waymo. How do you guys feel about that? Like to me, that 81% is just like a shiny little bee that they're trying to distract you with, right? But the 81% is not for us; it's for the insurance companies. So that's what I think. That was my biggest takeaway from that. And like I said, I invite you to read the study and to make your own conclusions. But they do mention the insurance companies in here, and that's a key consideration for Waymo, not for the safety of you, me, and your grandma, right? So Sibia says the level of granular published data can also be a red flag. The generalization seems to balloon. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we'll see a little bit of that, Sibia. At least I think I understand what you mean by that. Rex says, I'm guessing it's not just the miles driven, but also the conditions under which they conducted these drives, as you previously pointed out. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Rex, and that's the thing that when I engage with their people on X, I always ask them that, right? But not in a direct way. Can you tell me exactly why you chose Phoenix? You seem to do a lot of miles in Phoenix. Can you tell me why that is? They scurry away, right? They scurry away. They run away when you ask them that, because that's the reality. The reality is that they cherry-picked Phoenix. There's a reason why they're on the west coast of the U.S. and not the east coast, right? But yeah, I mean that's kind of like the dirty secret, right? That they'll point out the meta numbers, the 25 million, but they won't tell you that Phoenix has like 300 days of sunshine a year, right? It's probably more than that, because I mean Phoenix, they barely get any rain, they don't get any snow. Bright sunny days, long days, right? Deserts tend to have long days, so they got sun from like 5 a.m. to like 8 p.m., right? No fog. There's not a lot of tunnels, not a lot of covered bridges. It's an ideal city for these models, right? They're not going to be great, but it's an ideal city for that. But they don't tell you that, right? So yeah, Rex, it's definitely the conditions, the weather, the infrastructure, right? If it's a newer city with newer highways, that means you also have newer lights. So the night driving is easier because the lights are brighter, right? You go to the East Coast, some of the highways on the East Coast don't have great lighting because the lights are old, right? So, that's the part they don't tell you. All right, let's keep going down here. So for never ever was asking about p hacking, right? So here's where we can kind of maybe start to get a feel for it. This is what we did, the other day. Also, where you can kind of start seeing some of the numbers and developing a nose for the for the significance of the difference, right? So just so you guys understand this, again, they're using the airbag, the any injury, but they don't define the severity of the injury, and then whether it was reported to the police or not, right? The blue is Waymo, and the yellow is the benchmark, the human benchmark. I can't quite remember where they got that human benchmark from. I think it was like another study, but this is where they're at, right? So some of these numbers are closer than others. I'm sorry, and then the different columns are the cities, right? So that's Phoenix and San Francisco. Phoenix alone, and in San Francisco alone. So we can actually kind of drop the first column and just look at the individual cities. So obviously, when it comes, as a first pass for the value of the significance, we want to look at the deltas, right? So generally speaking, all of these have pretty good deltas, right? 1.46 to 0.35, 2.14 to 1.06. That's probably the closest one they have. So some of these, have the potential to at least show some significance, right? Because the deltas are wide enough, right? If they weren't as wide, then I think the chances of it being significant kind of drop, right? But yeah, I mean, this is where that type of examination can begin as far as the p hacking. But what I also wanted to point out to you guys was that they have raw data available. And by the way, you should probably read their methodology and their FAQ. I thought that was kind of interesting. Let me see if I can quickly get one for you. Yeah, here. They don't share at fault information. So even in those situations where they're telling you, oh, it was less severe of an injury, there was no airbag deployment, there was this, there was that, they don't make a distinction between whether the Waymo was wrong or the other cars in the accident were wrong. So that's something that I thought was a little suspicious, because that's basically what insurance companies do, right? They determine who's at fault and who has to pay who, right? Which insurance company has to pay each one, right? I mean, finding fault is a very important thing in most car accidents, right? So they don't do that, which I thought was interesting. Why? Again, talking about the severity, they basically put everything into an injury, just like an injury section, right? So here they say, reviews all crashes result in any injury from minor causes to fatal ones. So in other words, in those stats they were showing about we cause less injuries, well, they're using a pretty broad definition for injuries, right? So it's not a perfect comparison, but one of the things you'll learn about, and for never ever, kind of staying in your realm, in statistics, right? We talked about p hacking and how there's no standardized p values and things like that. Another thing another way that people lie with statistics, it's called bucketing, and that's where you play around with your different analytic groups and how you're breaking up your data. So just as a simple example, like ages, right? Like when you have these age ranges, you know how studies have like different age ranges? Like some people define young adult as under 28 or under 21, or others will do 25. And then senior citizen is 65 or 52 or 50, right? That's called bucketing. And you can lie with statistics depending on how you bucket that data. Like you can have different cuts that show different results based on how you break that up. So again, my critical eye as an experienced data scientist makes me say, well, why just have one bucket? Because that's what they're doing, right? They're bucketing everything into one. It's just a big injury bucket. Why? Like I said, it's a common way to lie with statistics. If you ever want to see that for yourself, go find a study that has ages like that and then come up with your own ranges. Like you'll see all kinds of different charts, right? All over the place, depending on how you do your bucketing. So that's something else that kind of caught my eye. And then down here, they make their data available. I haven't had a chance to look at it, but they claim to be able to do it via zip code or to break it out via zip code, which I think would be an interesting study, right? So if there's an interest, maybe we can do this in a second session. But I wanted to point this out to you guys because I know that sometimes I get questions. Where do I find a project? Where do I get data? There's no free data available. I don't know how to find data. Guys, it's there. You just have to go look for it, right? What I'm doing here is no different than the same advice I give you that I did to do my studies and to prepare myself to be a data scientist. The data's out there. You just have to, go out and look for it. Go out and put the effort for it, right? But I mean, there's like what, 4 CSVs and 1 PDF in here. Well, the PDF is a release notes. So there's 4 CSVs in here, right? Like there's a wealth of information here. I mean, you guys could come up with multiple studies, just on these 4 CSVs. So again, taking that meta view, right, getting away from the specifics of Waymo. This is the same stuff that I used to do, right? I have a personal interest. Some articles come out, a new study comes out. You go, you hunt it down, and sometimes they make the data available, sometimes they don't. But I'm showing this to you guys so that I never get that project question again, right? Because it's out there. It's out there. The ideas can come if you read through their stuff, you look at their data, you do some initial exploration, so on and so forth, right? But I hope that you guys have taken this as another example of how being a data scientist is not just about models. It's not just about knowing the latest version of Python. It's about being able to have an opinion on these things, have the ability to read through these studies and say, okay, yeah, this sounds promising, or no, wait a minute, I think there's some holes in this study. We should be careful here, right? So I hope that's been beneficial to you guys, because this is the kind of stuff that I like to do. I take a personal interest in these automated vehicles, and some of these companies are less ethical than others, if there are any that are ethical, right? But this is another exercise of your data scientist skills, right? Data science is not like a part-time thing. It's you do it all the time because numbers are all around you, right? Algorithms are all around you. So I'm going to stop there because we've been going for an hour and a half, which is crazy. But I hope that you have found this beneficial. I hope that you apply your own critical eye to these things. At the very least, be suspicious of numbers that people tell you. Anybody tells you. Well, what makes up that number? Over what time period? What's been your range for those numbers? What's the composition of those numbers proportionately? Right? Have that mindset, because that's how a data scientist thinks. Now, I know I'm a natural pessimist, right? So maybe I think about that more than other people. But I'm encouraging you to think about that because it's important. It's important. It's developing your skills, developing your reputation, developing your attitude, your mindset of what a data scientist, kind of like really does in the real world. Okay. Rex says, awesome session. Sibia says, very beneficial for an hour. Thank you. Fatima says, session is really interesting. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you all of you for that feedback. Really appreciate that. Sibia, and for Never Ever, I know it was your first time, so please keep on coming back. These are the types of sessions and discussions that we do. Sometimes I take more questions than other days, but Fatima and Rex, always appreciate your support also. But yeah, I hope you guys do enjoy this because, I don't think anybody else is doing this, but this is the stuff I enjoy. And like I said, this is real world data science, right? And for some of you who earlier, I don't know if you're still here, but the students from earlier, right? You should be doing this too and saying, oh, wait a minute, I recognize when they say this. I recognize when they say it. Start building your skills little by little like that. Take what you're learning in the classroom and go use it. I promise you that's going to bring you a lot of benefits. All right, everybody. So tomorrow, tutorial session, would be happy to have you. We're going to do some coding, more talking out of ideas, more everything. But, until then, we're living in crazy times, so please take care of yourselves, take care of your families, and I'll see you next time.